All right, it is the Communications Steroids podcast. Thanks for joining us again this week. It's much appreciated on both my part, Tim Gordon.
And Roger Pike.
And Roger's part. Can you get a little closer to the microphone, Roger, or do I need to lower it so you can... Never mind.
Lower your voice. How's this?
Very nice. Okay. We were just talking briefly, just a moment ago, about publicity, which I thought was interesting. We'll get to our main topic here in a second. And you know, the old adage is that all publicity is good publicity. And we disagreed with that, actually.
Strongly, vehemently, powerfully.
And I think a guy like Roger Clemens would probably disagree with that, too.
Or who was that congressman who got arrested for soliciting in the bathroom?
Oh, Craig?
Yeah, Larry Craig.
Larry Craig,
yeah, he probably wouldn't think all publicity is a good publicity, no.
Yeah. He's got a new website out, Larry Craig's List.
I follow politics a great deal, and there's a lot of stories that you learn when you're follow politics. And one of the stories is a Southern politician who once said that the only way that he could be defeated would be to be found in bed with a live boy or a dead girl. So,
I wonder which politician that was.
I don't know.
Anyway, tonight on the podcast, we're going to talk about the pause.
The what?
The pause.
Yeah, exactly. The power of the pause. The pause is an incredibly, intensely powerful thing.
It is such a little thing.
And we're going to tell you why it is. It is a little thing, isn't it? I mean, and it goes against our nature as communicators, doesn't it?
If you're standing up in front of people and all of a sudden for instance, need to figure out what your next thought is before you start speaking again. You know, your first thought is, if you're up there, is, you know, the deer in the headlights.
Exactly.
And you're thinking,
big
you're thinking, oh my God, they think I'm stupid. They think I don't even know what I'm talking about. And you may be thinking that,
but they're not.
But chances are,
right.
they're not thinking that at all.
We think as communicators that anytime there's silence, we got to fill that silence up. I mean, silence is a horrible thing. I mean, well, you and I learned that in radio land. Dead air is like the death of radio, and if you have dead air, then the program director comes and beats you on the head with a mallet and stuff like that.
Or the red light is blinking, and it's the hotline from the program director saying, "What happened? You had 5 seconds of nothing going on there." Well, radio, of course, is different than getting up in front of a crowd of people. And why is that, Roger?
Silence is not necessarily bad when you're communicating. I mean, silence can accomplish three things, and all of the three things are good. The first thing that silence can do is it can accentuate a powerful moment. We'll explain a little bit more about that in just a second. It also can allow you to gather yourself. I mean, if you've been speaking right along and you've been communicating and you've been tossing out ideas and you just have been doing great things, and you come to the end of a thought and you just don't, you're thinking and what? Well, you got to pause for a second, pull yourself together, and move on. So it allows you to do that, and that's the second thing that it does. The third thing that it does is it gets rid of annoying vocal habits. And you know what those vocal habits are.
You really have to work on those.
You really
the uhs, the ums, the well, those types of things.
Stuff just drives me up a wall, and trust me when I tell you that it drives the people you're communicating with up a wall too.
It is better to not say anything than to rely on a crutch. And believe me, it's hard to get rid of if you've got them. It's one of it's one of the most difficult things to consciously say to yourself as you come to the end of a thought, not to say, what I meant to say was, it's hard, and that's why the pause, even though you think it's such a little thing, is so important.
And it's so tempting to fill that silence up, and you don't have to. So let's look at those things in reverse order. First of all, the problem. The accomplishes nothing. It distracts from your message, and it makes people think you're not professional. Professionals don't do that.
Right.
People know it.
Yeah.
And it makes people think you're not professional. So eliminate and from your verbal repertoire. It doesn't exist anymore. Dump it.
It'll take work, but you can do it.
You can do it, and you should do it. And replace those ums and ahs with silence. And I want to interject something here because this is kind of important. One of the things.
How can you interject if you're already speaking?
Well, I guess this is off.
I was
topic
interjecting.
In a way.
I'm sorry.
You were interjecting. Yeah. This is off topic in a way, but it kind of relates to it, and that is simply this: one of the big things that I have to guard against in my own communication, in my own speaking, is that I tend to speak very fast. And whenever I watch myself, whenever I videotape myself and play myself back, I think I'm going too fast. And when I'm sitting back there thinking, oh my God, my speaking is just dragging on, it's just taking me forever to get this stuff out. How can people even be listening to me? This is boring. That's when I'm actually speaking at the proper pace. And it's just a psychological thing. The pause is the same way in a way. People sit there and think I've been pausing for hours now, but
it's been 5 seconds.
Exactly. Yeah. It is exactly the same thing. So get rid of the ahs. You don't need them. Insert silence instead.
It also does something for your audience in that if you've been unloading ideas on them and talking very quickly and things have been coming out, it gives them a chance to take a mental breath.
Exactly.
And that's doing them a favor. Because you may have dumped all this great information out and ideas and stuff. Next thing, they need to digest it for just a second. So give them a few seconds.
Because they've been holding their breath.
They've been holding their breath, yeah. Mentally, they
need to exhale. Yeah. Mentally exhale. Exactly right. The second thing it does is it allows you to gather your thoughts. As we say, there's no rule that says you have to go from one thought to the next thought instantaneously.
And this is especially effective in a Q&A when someone asks, you're at the end of your speech and you're doing a question and answer, which we've talked about before. Someone asks you a question, you don't have to just start talking as soon as they ask the question. No. Unless, of course, you have a ready answer. But if you need to think about this for a second, there's nothing wrong with that.
The third thing it does is it allows you to accentuate a powerful moment. One of the great devices that I use in my speaking all the time, and one of the things that I think that I use to greatest effect, it's one of my favorite techniques, and one I think I do very well, is the build, what I call the build. You build and you build and you build, and you not only build, you build in terms of the points that you're making and the power of your message. You're getting to the pinnacle of your speech. You're getting to the point of the story that you're telling, and you've been going faster and faster and faster and getting louder and louder and louder. And just as you reach the crux of the matter, you pause and you talk softly. You whisper. People suddenly lean forward because you've been going so fast and building so much that now they are absolutely bought in to what you're about to do, and they want desperately to hear what you're saying. And the way that you accentuate that moment is you pause, and it works. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it works.
But you have to work on it because you can overdo it.
You can overdo it.
You can underdo it, for that matter. So it does take some practice. It does take some work on that to figure out what works best for you. Now, what works best for Roger may not work for me. What works best for you may not work for me.
Mm-hmm.
But, a pause is one of those little tiny things you really don't think too much about, and we thought it was worth discussing.
Absolutely.
On today's podcast. Anything else to throw in about the pause here, Roger?
In praise of the power of the pause.
I'm going to use that as our headline on the Pausecast. The podcast.
Oh, no.
Roger, thanks again for trekking the 10 miles through the pouring Oregon rain to come up and sit in the Gonzo Deck studios for yet another cool Communication Steroids podcast. See you next time.
My pleasure.